the very broad question. First of all, Mr. Wieben, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Okay.
You can call me Peter, by the way. It's because yeah, I guess I'm used to that. Yeah, it's good. I'm here in Amsterdam to answer the question of where everyone is. That's where I am. It's 7:30. So yeah, doing well. I went out to the forest with my kids this morning. Now I'm back. So
Nice.
yeah, and thanks for having me, by the way.
So I'm going to start off with a very broad question. I guess the rest of this interview will play out based on your answer to that question, which
Okay.
is while your main businesses are app design, app development, and branding for other businesses right now, but all of these passions all fall into art. So where and how did your passion for art develop?
That's I haven't thought about that in a while. So yeah, I mean, right now I'm doing design, which I think is different from art. So design it's more, at least what I'm doing now is more towards like business objectives. So I have clients and I make things for clients, that like apps and products and things like this, usually because they want to make money. I think with art, it's something that, yeah, you can make money from it, but that's not the main goal. Usually the main goal is because you want to say something, or you have, I guess in my case, it's more that you have something you want to get out of you. I don't know if you have this, if you understand what I'm saying, like you have this feeling that there's something you want to say so badly that if you don't, like, you'll be sick. Like you really need to express something. And that's what I had. I mean, since I was a little kid, I loved to draw. Like I just would sit inside and draw and like copy photos with a pencil. So I always loved it. But as I got older, it became a way to communicate. And the more that I got into it, the more it just became like an outlet, you know? So, I mean, yeah, it was sort of an outlet for things I wanted to say, and it became more and more like as I experienced things in life that I had opinions on, it became an outlet for that as well. So it sort of developed, but it comes from that place of just needing to express something, and then that was the way that I could do it. That was the way it seemed natural to do it. I'm no good at music, so it's my only option.
Yeah, so why do you think art specifically was the best medium for you to express your opinions as opposed to written media and other forms of like expression?
Well, I did a lot of writing too. So my big dream, like when I graduated college, my big dream was to write books. I wanted to be a writer illustrator. So I spent a lot of time working on that, and actually I just mentioned before we started that I had like a few jobs here and there after I graduated, but I was really kind of avoiding working for like a company or something because I wanted more time to work on doing books. And the reason why, I think for me, when I was in high school, like you go through your first like struggles, like family struggles, or you go through things where you got problems with parents at home and things like that. And to me, I went into books. So I really found a few books that I can almost say they're like medicine, you know, like when you're really feeling upset or lonely or something, you go into a book and suddenly you feel better. It gives you that like nourishment that you need. So I wanted to make that. I wanted to try to make medicine for other people that might be in bad situations or that needed that medicine at that time. And the best way that I could think of to do it at first was books. So that's what I wanted to do. And art was just part of that. So I wanted them to be beautiful. I didn't want to just have a bunch of text, because I was always like a picture book person. You know, like children's books and things like that. I just thought they were really cool looking. And so whenever I did books, I tried to add art, and that's kind of where I tried to make my path. But well, that's what I was trying to do anyway.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, because a lot of your designs, especially Worrydolls and your personal illustrations and stories on your website are all like kind of like a children's book, but the subject matter is very heavy and very dark. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense right now. But guys, if you want to check that out, just search for Peter on Google and you can hit the first link and you should be able to find those stories. So you talked a little about high school. What do you think? Everyone has like phases in high school. So what kind of phases do you go through before you finally decided on what you wanted to achieve in life?
Yeah, I went through a lot. So let's see. I had a big mouth. Like I was, I got in a lot of kind of, I don't know. Like I was a smart aleck. So I thought for a while I would be a lawyer or something like this, but that quickly faded away. And then when I went to college, I didn't have a direction for what I wanted to do. I wasn't one of these people who knew, okay, I'm going to go into pre-med or pre-law or something like that, right? So I just ended up choosing a bunch of classes and they were all religion. So I started studying Islam, I started studying Buddhism, and I started studying Hinduism, and I started studying all these different like religions. And I became a religion major because of it. I just was interested in it, like really interested in rituals and learning about beliefs and things like that. So I did that. And as you might guess, like, well, it's one of those majors where there aren't like tons of jobs lining up for you afterwards. So then I had always had art and design kind of things like as a hobby. So I did them on the side. So when I needed to work, I basically just said, that's what I do. And I had that as kind of a skill. And yeah, and then there was also that sort of phase of, well, I had this dream to do books. And so I was more interested in my dream, so to say, of doing this thing of like trying to make this medicine that I was saying, than earning money. So for a long time, I did this on the side, design on the side to make money, but like, oh, my real thing is these books that I'm doing. So I'd say that's also a phase. And then once I had a kid, then you need money, really. So at that time, I really needed to provide for a family, and that was an interesting challenge, because then it became about, you know, like I said, I had these things I wanted to express that are inside me that never went away. So I had to unify like my dream and my passion and a way to make money. So I think that's kind of the phase I'm in now, which is like trying to get both and balance it and have it be, yeah, a way to make a living, but also not give up on what I started out trying to do.
Yeah, so no matter what phase you went through in high school, whether it be religion or any of the other phases that you mentioned, you never left your true passion, right?
Yeah,
so that's really important.
Right.
That's a really important lesson for high schoolers to know, because everyone around us is telling us like to do this, to do that, and we want to please everyone. But at the end of the day, I feel like our happiness is the most important, because we're gonna have to live with ourselves in our entire lives. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's your happiness. I think it's important. It's not only important to you, it's important to the world on some level, right? I mean, not necessarily in my case, but in everyone's case, that if you have something that you feel in your heart that you should be doing, that you listen to that. There's a reason that you feel that way, because I think it will lead you in lots of weird directions. So for me, the path is really wavy, and it goes up and down and through all sorts of weird nooks and crannies, that it's not at all a straight path. But if you follow that, you end up going to some interesting places. And I think, you know, we need each other to sort of express or do what we feel that we should be doing, because otherwise, if you totally turn your back on it, I totally agree. I think you won't do well at what you're trying to do if you're doing it for other reasons. You'll lack the inspiration, and the world's also going to miss out on what you would have done if you had stuck with it. So yeah, I think that's totally true.
Yeah, great. So I was reading your resume back when I first met you, and on it said that you went to Carleton College in Minnesota for religion. So why did you choose the United States?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm from like right where I went to school. So I'm from Minnesota,
Oh,
and I was born and raised in Rochester, Minnesota, which is like a relatively small town. And then when I had to, like we were just talking about, you and Elvira picking colleges, like I did really badly at that. I didn't have a list. I just was kind of like, okay, I hope this is a good choice. Like I just kind of chose, and it turned out fine. But yeah, Carleton's like, it's nearby to my to where I'm from, so that was an aspect. But also the student body is more, let's say, like from more different places than the typical place in Minnesota. It's kind of spread out, and it has a reputation that you get sort of insight of different things. So I like that feeling. Yeah, but that was why. It was because it was nearby. I could drive
Okay,
there.
I actually didn't know that you were born and raised in Minnesota, so that's a new fact for me. And you mentioned that there was a lot of diversity, and that's why you chose that college. So, because of that diversity, did you choose to travel the world after you graduated college? Was that the reason why?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why. And also, so my family's not from Minnesota, so my grandfather on my dad's side was an army guy. He was like in the US Army. And so they moved around because he was kind of a diplomat kind of guy. So in our house when I was a kid, we had like the things that my father had gathered from all these places where he lived. So he lived in France, he lived in Japan, he lived in Senegal, he lived all over the world. He lived in Israel for a while, like just everywhere, that not by choice, but because he was dragged from place to place. So my sister and I had this feeling of like, okay, we were in a small town, and it's that classic story of like, I'm in a small town and I want to go and explore, especially because we had all these kind of like bait in the water, like for a fish, you know, like seeing this picture. My dad had a picture of him holding this giant fish as a kid in Senegal, and I was like, well, we don't have that here in Minnesota. So when I graduated, yeah, I just signed up for the first program that took me like as far away as I could go, because I would just wanted to explore basically.
Mhm. So I was looking at your Tumblr a few months ago, and I saw that you traveled to Sri Lanka in 2008. Why did you choose Sri Lanka at a time where it is at where the civil war and everything was going on there? Were you exposed to like war stories growing up, and was that the reason why you wanted to go?
Uh, well, okay, so yeah, we went. There was a civil war on, so we weren't allowed to go to certain places. So like we weren't allowed to go to certain cities and things like that, or areas where it was dangerous. But there were two reasons I wanted to go. So I mentioned I was studying Buddhism. So I went to Sri Lanka and I studied Buddhism there, and I learned a little bit, a few words of Sinhalese, and lived with the family. But it was sort of the same thing. It was like you can't be farther away. In fact, I think if you look at the globe, it's like almost opposite from Minnesota. So it's kind of a different place, and it was a really cool program because I just went and lived with the family there for like 6 or 7 months. And this was before, so we didn't have there was internet if you went to like an internet cafe, but other than that, it was just like, yeah, it's not like, I think if I did it now, it would be different. But then it was just kind of like, there I was, and it was totally living in a different scenario. So I wanted that, I think also just to see what would happen because it was really far away. So it was again that sort of exploration thing. And yeah, to be honest, I ended up in a lot of kind of conflict areas, but not by choice. Like I'm scared of it.
Okay.
I find it really like quite stressful. I mean, I'm the guy that made Worrydolls, you know, so like I'm an anxious person. So it did really stress me out. But yeah, it's been sort of a constant presence for me for whatever reason.
Yeah. And how did your experiences in Sri Lanka contribute to your life, or specifically your career? Did it have any contribution in any way?
Yeah, it definitely got me. So well, since I left that time, and then the next time I went to Egypt, I haven't lived in the US really since, for a long time. I've lived outside the US. And I think that's part of the reason why, because I enjoyed exploring and I enjoyed kind of being outside of the culture I was raised in. I don't know why. It was interesting for me. I could meet a lot of people that had different perspectives and things like that. I enjoyed that. And as for the career, like I think now part of part of the like doing apps and things like that, like if you see the apps that I make, I try as much as possible to have them understood without language. So like you don't need too much instruction. It should, by pictures and everything, you can kind of tell what to do. And I think part of the reason why is because since, yeah, for the last couple of decades, I've been in countries where English is not the first language. So I'm always struggling to understand and be understood. So it sort of helps when I'm doing UX then to sort of make things simple.
Right. And you said that you were an anxious person, but then you went to Egypt in 2011, which is during its revolution. So I'd just like to know your motivations behind that.
Well, okay, so I had a plan. Okay, this is like the first of many plans that totally changed. So my plan was I'm going to go to Egypt, I'm going to learn Arabic, and then I wanted to learn Persian. And these were two languages that I would need to get a PhD in the study of religion. And then I was going to be a professor of religions. So like a college professor. So I had the chance to go to Egypt, and it included free Arabic class if I was going to work. So I was like an intern, and I got a little bit of money, but I got free Arabic lessons, and I got to go to Egypt. So I did that. And then like week two that I was there, we went to the beach just to relax, whatever, like myself and the other interns. And I met a girl, and now she's my wife. So like I got derailed by meeting a girl. So well, to answer your question, I wasn't there for the revolution on purpose. Like, you know, I was there because my wife was born and raised in Egypt. So then I just stayed. We were, you know, together. So I stayed there because of her.
Yeah, that's really sweet. So I think your first like designer job was at Korean Goating, a brand design startup in 2009. Was that in Egypt?
Yes, that was in Egypt. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and
How did you land that job? Because you just graduated with a degree in religion and now you're going straight into design. How did they believe you?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I lied. That's the answer. So basically, the Korean Goating, they're my first teachers, and I owe them a lot. And the one founder was Manoj Korean. He's a German guy, and the other was Sagar Goating, who was born and raised in Mumbai, India. And yeah, Sagar was an advertising professional. He worked for Leo Burnett and TBWA and a few other like big advertising companies. So he like worked on Coca-Cola and like huge high budget ad campaigns. He was one founder. And the other was Manoj, who was really a by the book designer. Like he designed typefaces, like fonts. He designed fonts, which in design world, that's like the most elite of the elite kind of people. He's really a very technical designer. And yeah, I really needed kind of a job because I was in Egypt and I was sort of looking around like, okay, I need to get some money. And Manoj was looking to hire a designer. So I said, I'm a designer. And he said, okay, let me see your portfolio. Okay. So then I panicked and I put together a PDF of some random things I had done. And I showed it to him and we met and he said, okay, you can work for us. And then it was, yeah, sort of low-level panic for a number of months as I tried to figure out what to do. I can explain more, like my presentation, somewhat about this time period as well. Like, yeah, I mean, basically, I just said that's what I do because I had a religion degree and people weren't hiring for academics in in religion, so I needed to have a skill, and that was the skill that I claimed to have.
So your skill. How exactly did that experience change your views on design and your skills?
Yeah, I mean, I learned everything from those two professionals. So I think I could have gone to like a master's program or something like that, but I just learned from Manoj and Sagar, and it was tough because I made some terrible errors. I like when I first started, I cost them thousands of dollars because I screwed things up, like technical things that I should have known better. And they just were really patient and taught me a lot. But how how it shaped me going forward, I think like the fact that that plan worked. So like saying that you were this job and then just doing the job, the fact that it worked has been the thing that kind of pushed me forward. So going back to what you mentioned, like following your passion, that it was sort of the secret to me of like, okay, you can do this if you just say like I'm going to do this because I feel that this is like a skill that I have or something I like to do and I want to go for it. I mean, I don't think it works if you want to be a doctor. This is something different. But if you want to do something like I do, where it's kind of an art kind of thing, that you can sort of hack it, right? So you can sort of say, yeah, I do this, and then go in and figure out as you go. And that's been more or less what I've done since. So like now I have a company and I handle big projects and things like that, but it's just a series of kind of saying that I can do it and then figuring it out. It's been a series of steps like that sort of one at a time bring you further and further. So yeah, I think that experience that was kind of the foundation, or like what made me understand how to have a career. Like that was the first example for me.
Yeah, and it seems like that foundation really worked for you because right after after 2011, you went from this low-level design job to the head of design at another company called Machine Party in 2014. So how did you land that job?
Well, so Machine Party was super cool. So the founder was a friend of mine. He was another American who his family has like the secret plans for a machine that makes steel pipes. So I'm talking about the pipes that are under the city. Okay, it's like the pipes that carry water from one place to the other under the city. His family figured out a way to make a spinning machine that creates these pipes in an efficient way. So his life is like going around the world to set up factories to make these pipes. And he's a very good friend of mine. He's a bit of a maniac. So he's like, he has just like big, wild ideas. And after the Egyptian revolution, we were all looking at Twitter. This was like the heyday of Twitter, when it was like, Twitter and Facebook will change the world. I know now we have like more different tools, right? But those days it was like Twitter was new, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is such a revolution. And he was watching the tweets come about like the political situation and all this. And he said, we can use this to make the process of making industrial machines more efficient. We can leverage this new type of technology to like order parts and get metal screws and sockets moving back and forth across the world. And he wanted to make a startup for this. So we just started working on it. And yeah, he ended up getting funding. That's just how it works. Like you work with a friend on some idea, and then you start pitching the idea to investors, and suddenly someone wants to give you like $500,000 or something like that to build it. And then there I was, head of design because I was already working on it. I just, at that time too, that was right after the revolution, I had just started my own company. So I wasn't working with Curry and Goating at that time. And I was just taking whatever work would come. So I started a bakery for someone. I started a yoga center, all sorts of different little businesses. And that was one that we were kind of working on, but like, I think a cooler one, because it was this huge, big idea, but it was the same type of thing. It was just like working with someone I knew in the neighborhood, and he ended up getting money to make it a real company.
Right, and I believe this is the first time that you had the word app listed on your resume. So what made you create an app for this company when you hadn't really done it before? You worked with branding and stuff not related to app design, which is a completely different landscape. So what inspired you to do that?
Well, it was needed. And actually, yeah, now that you pointed out and and looking back at it, it was again one of these things where it's like, okay, we have to do that. But at that time, and especially I didn't go to school for what I did, so I didn't know. I think if I looked now at the way I handled that task, I would be shocked. Like, oh, I did it in such a kind of not the best way, and it was kind of inefficient, and I was using the wrong programs for everything. But yeah, it was just sort of figure out as you go along, and we just needed this. And I knew I was using Adobe Illustrator to do it, which I think if you Now the tools are much different, but it was just sort of the way it was done. And yeah, we were just sort of talking, and he said, well, this is what I want to do. And then I just started working on it. And there I was, designing an app. So it was, again, kind of falling into it. It wasn't that there was a job posting and I said I knew how to design an app. I just sort of did. And then there it was. So after the fact, looking back, it was an app design, but not by intention beforehand.
Right. So I'd like to take you back to high school again. And at this point in your career, you were just doing like random jobs while you were at Mission Party, but you also had random jobs like a bakery, a yoga studio. Like, those are extremely random. And how do you feel looking back at your contemporaries back then, or people that were at the same age as you?
Looking back at my fellow students in high school?
Yeah, and people that were your age at the time.
In what way? So like in terms of how,
career-wise.
In terms of career? Yeah, that's another good question. I've seen a few different types of path. And it's really hard to say when you kind of look back whether, like, it's hard to say like mine's the best, you know? I think it fit me, it fit my personality. I've had friends who, like a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine that I knew all the way from like junior high, he worked at he signed up with like a corporation right out of college and has worked there since he graduated. It's like a very stable career path. And I have friends from college who were pre-med and went into medicine and followed that. And I think that's really also great. And they have their own sort of, let's say, like, it's a very ordered path. It's a very structured path. So you have to have some level of like chaos in your life, right? You have to invite some level of like mixing things up to keep it interesting. So people who do that sort of path, I found that they have a lot of like the friend of mine who works for the corporation, he has a side project doing art. So I have like some of his pottery over here. We also did the Kid Tiger t-shirt, like we had a t-shirt company together. So he's always having side hustles and doing things on the side, I think, as an outlet. But for me, my path was also my outlet. So that was scary because there were definitely times where I had no money because it was just failing. But the nice thing was that it was my passion. So like, if I got anything, it was like, if you got anything to eat from it, it was very delicious. Do you know what I mean? So like anything that I succeeded at, it counted twice for me because it was in line with what my real goal was from my heart. So that's the benefit for me. But I think maybe it's not for everyone. If I look at my group of friends and how they also chose to do things, sort of hard to say.
Yeah, and in this day and age, I feel like money runs the world more than people control it, if that makes sense. So what do you think is more important to a person, to you specifically, money or passion?
Do I let my wife hear me say this? Look, you need money, right? On some level, you eventually need it. But if you ask me my core belief, I think if you follow your passion really sincerely, I think, at least what I've found, you find ways to make money along the way. And especially now, I think, like, as you say, money runs the world. So it is a bit of a trap. Like, you have to pay cell phone, you have to pay internet, you have to pay rent, you have student loans. Like, these things kind of come at you when you graduate college, and it's like, now you have to pay, like, just to be alive costs money. And it's very kind of a grim thing. But here's the flip side. So there's always a flip, right? Now, with the way things are, you can put some side hustle together or something together for yourself and put it out there, and you can reach millions of people. Like, you never know. I mean, this app I did, Worrydolls, is how we met, right? So I think I just sort of put that out there, and it reached, for whatever reason, tons of people. And I think that's really exciting. Like, you have to you have to look at also the opportunity, because there's a huge challenge. Yes. Oh, meet my cat. There's a huge challenge that you need to get money, but there's a huge opportunity that you have any instruction in the world at your fingertips. You can go on YouTube or Google and figure out how to do a lot of things creatively, scientifically. If you want to invent things, you can figure out how, and you have instant channels to get them out there. So yeah, I like, if you're willing to sort of scrape by and hustle and like stay up late and work on things, there's a whole world of things you can do to make money. So yeah, it's to answer your question, I think passion. Yeah, because if you just go for money, I think, at least for me, what I was always afraid of, and I don't know because I didn't try this path, I was really afraid of ending up at the age of like 50 or 60 and looking back and being like, oh crap, like I chose the wrong path. I really did not want that. So I took a lot of risks to avoid it. And it worked out money wise. So in the end, I found a way to make money. So that's like one person waving a flag being like, you can do this. It works if you don't give up. So I would say, I would say passion's more important.
Right, and that just goes to show that there are many, many paths to success, and you're the only. I feel like us as individuals are the only ones that can determine our own success, and the people around us cannot, because they don't understand us as well as we understand ourselves. So yeah, that's great. I'd like to go back to your career. So right after you worked at Machine Party, you founded a clothing company, as you mentioned before, called Kid Tiger. Why did you go from creating an app or just working in that kind of space to creating clothing?
Yeah. So, well, I think one of the sort of general things that one thing to understand also when it comes to like how I managed to do more or less my passion and make money at the same time was that I was always doing projects while these things were going on. So the things that I'm listing on the CV are like, here are things that I created in companies that I did for myself also. But at the same time, I also had client work. So I was doing branding, I was doing websites, I was doing smaller apps, or not really apps, but like websites and things like that during that time. But the Kid Tiger was, again, this friend of mine who worked at the big corporation, and he was a retail buyer. So that means he would like, everyone would come to him and pitch products, and he would pick which ones he wanted to buy. And he met the guy who made t-shirts for like Disney and all these huge companies. He had like a giant t-shirt factory. And he said, hey, you know how to draw. Should we put some pictures on t-shirts? Because this guy wants to, like, he's willing to print us cheap t-shirts that we can sell. So we thought, okay, jackpot, like we'll try to do this. And what we ended up trying to do, we wanted to make kids shirts, but they were like for a good cause. So we had shirts about endangered species. That was one. One was about science education. So we had like an astronaut t-shirt, very classic kids t-shirt, but it came with like a book about space exploration. So they all came with little mini books. So again, me trying to do books, right? Like the returning theme of what I wanted to do. Yeah, it was again sort of an attempt to say, I want to do creative stuff, I want to draw, I want to make books, and like maybe the key is to sell a t-shirt, and that will be like my path to making money with this. But it was again like one of these things that I tried that didn't really, we did t-shirts and we sold a few, but it wasn't what eventually clicked. It was another attempt.
Yeah, actually, I thought the business succeeded because on paper it says that you worked with Walmart, Disney, and all these other big retailers, and the initiative is really good. And I thought a lot of people would like it, but I didn't know that until you told me actually that this business had failed. So why do you think that this business failed, even though everything was good on paper?
Yeah, it's good on paper, and we worked with these companies and pitched and sold a few things here and there. But one thing to keep in mind, and this is something that I learned a lot of times in my life, which is almost all businesses fail. Really, almost all businesses fail. That's something to know. Like if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that most things that you try, it's very complicated, and it's sort of, you need to get a very sort of magic balance to make something work. And you can get better at it. And I think some people have a real talent for it in terms of finding like a product market fit, something like that. You might have encountered that phrase in your adventures. Some people really have a good eye for such things, but a lot of businesses just don't make it, like Machine Party as well, and a lot of startups just sort of fizzle out. I think if you get one that works and makes money 1 out of 10 tries, that's pretty good, honestly. But that means you have 9 failures for every one that works, and you have to accept that, because if you the first ones that fail, and while it's going, so like while Kid Tiger is going, we had a bunch of moments where we thought, this is going great, we have a deal, it's not enough, it's not like, you know, enough to retire or something, it's a little bit of money coming in, this is good, but eventually it just didn't make money, and we hung it up. But I think that's just to set expectations. If you do decide to follow like this kind of winding path, or do it for yourself, start your own businesses, that a lot of them don't work, but that means that when you get one that does work, it's awesome, because then it's like it clicks and things are going, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you have to really work hard to make it work. But you have to prepare for that like when things don't, that you keep going, and also that you communicate it in a good way, so that you don't, you know, you gain with everything you do, you get experience, right? So like all these things I did that didn't work, or that worked for a little while and then stopped working, you gather every time lessons, and you don't, if you don't make the same mistake twice, you eventually get to a position where you're pretty good at it, and then you can kind of push things forward. But that's definitely one thing I learned, is like, don't, like, defeats are part of the process. Failure is definitely part of the process.
Okay, so clothing company didn't work out, but right after that, you went back to designing apps. You founded Tiger, which is your software design company. Why did you go back to app design after working at this clothing company for 3 years?
Yeah, so well, during that time, that was when I moved to the Netherlands. So I was living in Egypt, going along, and then my wife and I were going to have a baby. So I think we just decided we'll move to the Netherlands, and it's just like a bit less chaotic, and the political situation in Egypt was tough at that time, kind of tough, and we just needed kind of a more stable situation, so we don't have to worry that we have to leave or whatever else. So we came to the Netherlands, and I started doing my own thing again, my own work basically, and I got into cryptocurrency. So this was about the time of, like, you guys know, like, Bitcoin and stuff like that, right? So like when it first came, you had Bitcoin, and then you had the first boom of like all the other little tokens and stuff like that. There were a lot of those in the Netherlands, and I joined a project that was building an app for cryptocurrency, this was probably the second big time that I was like, I can do that, when I didn't know what I was doing. But it worked out really well. So I basically said, okay, I can do this task of running this app, like design the app, but also help the developers and do all this stuff. And I did. So I worked for a company called Ronin that made a crypto app. And then after that, okay, that's another one that didn't work for a whole bunch of reasons. But I made some really close friends and colleagues who were the app developers. And that was really, I think, tough, because really good developers, I mean, you all are like science students, right? So that's one of the ones where you can really work on your own and learn how to do things and make money if you're passionate about like programming or something like that. So I met some really smart people that were doing that. And so Tiger was like that group of people who came together on that project. And yeah, I'm the designer of the group, but everyone else is programmers. But it was just like, okay, we had a really good team, and we thought, like, let's just stay together, because we can do much better together than we'll do sort of separate out there in the world.
Is that your main focus right now, Tiger?
Yeah, that's how I support myself now. So it's, yeah, that's quite a bit of my time. And then I have my own side projects, like Worrydolls is one of those, like things that I'm doing on the side, which are still sort of coming from that same place of like my passion projects, but more and more it's kind of coming together. So like that I can do the things that I like with this team of really talented people. But yeah, for the most part, Tiger is the main thing now.
Yeah. So to kind of get the flow going with their audience again, I'd like to go back to Worrydolls, or just start off on Worrydolls, which is,
Okay.
I'm sure, the reason why everybody's here, everyone's heard of it. But if you do not know Worrydolls, to everyone in the audience, Worrydolls. Wait, Peter, would you like to explain what Worrydolls is?
Yeah. Well, there's a concept of a worry doll in the real world. So it's a little tiny doll, and they're originally Guatemalan. I think they come from Guatemala. They're tiny little dolls made of like a stick and some string. And the idea is that when you're a worried child, which I was, like a stressed out child, that you whisper your worry and then to the doll, and you put it under your pillow, and the doll takes the worry away. And I had these when I was a kid. My grandma gave me those when I was a kid. And yeah, so basically for me, as a result of being in Egypt during the revolution, I was just a very stressed out person. I was constantly anxious. I went through a period where every day at like 11 a.m. I couldn't work. It was really bad. Like I was really stressed out, and I really went through a period of not being productive, having trouble working, having trouble sleeping, things like this, just because of anxiety. So I was really looking for a way to conquer that, and I started kind of journaling and writing down things that worried me. So those ideas sort of came together at some point where I said, okay, this is a good metaphor, and I can make it an app and just let people tell their worries to this little doll on the phone. So that's all the app is. You just see a little doll, and you tell the doll what's worrying you, and then you can later, the worry can be finished. And the idea is that if I don't know if anyone listening faces anxiety, but for me, as someone who does, when you have an anxious thought, you feel like this is it. Like this thought in particular will be the one that gets me. So it could be like, oh, I have a big test and I'm going to fail, and then I won't get into the school I want, and then I'll have a bad life. Like it just becomes a huge catastrophe out of this small worry. But then once it passes, if you look back on it, you say, okay, it wasn't that bad. So the idea with Worrydolls is that you say that the worry is finished, and then over time you collect these old worries that you thought at the time were going to be the one that got you. But then as you look back, you notice, okay, that one didn't get me. Okay, that one didn't turn out so bad. That one wasn't as bad as I was afraid. You know what I mean? So you look back over time, and then when the next one comes and you enter it to that next doll, part of your brain is saying, I bet this one won't be as bad as I think. That's the theory. So actually, that sort of process is what helped me, and that's what I tried to put into the UX of Worrydolls.
Yeah, and around the time when you were putting Worrydolls in the App Store, there were probably a lot of other anxiety management and mental health management apps. So what exactly gave you the courage to put Worrydolls out there? And I think this piece of advice, or whatever you're going to give us here, is going to be useful to a lot of people that haven't pursued their dreams or have been scared of their competitors or whatever factors may be around them. So yeah, what gave you the courage to do that?
Yeah. Well, like I told you, so I had already failed at everything. I was used to it. So I thought if I do one more and it fails, okay, fine, I'm ready for it, you know? Because if you look, like you just heard my whole story, right? Like so many things went wrong, and entire kind of dreams went wrong, right? So like the whole idea of doing books, I don't do books. That didn't work. I had these startups like Machine Party, didn't work. Kid Tiger also tried to do it with my art, didn't work. So I wasn't worried about that at the time, and I still had this thing I wanted to express, right? So I was used to it enough, and I had been training enough, you know, like if you want to do a lot of push-ups or something, the first time you try to do 10 push-ups, it's really hard, but if you do it every single day, eventually you get used to it. And I think that's what I had been doing, just kind of failing all the time. So then when it was time to do this, it was like, okay, let's just try. yeah, and the funny thing is that it did kind of get me, like I said at the very beginning, like I wanted to make medicine in a way, you know? So I think in a way this was like a way that I ended up getting there, but I had to go through a really long path to find it. But in terms of how to do it, like if you're starting, like if I were to do this again, and the advice, um do it on purpose to fail. Then if you're worried you might, because you just know that you have to fail a bunch of times before you succeed, and just be like, okay, I'm gonna go fail, and then if it works you'll feel really happy. But if you don't care from the beginning, then you'll have the courage to do it, because there were others and there still are. But the funny thing is, like with Worrydolls, I remember when I was first launching it, there were some others that were out there that I thought like, wow, these are big apps. Like, how will I compete with them? And I had a small goal. I was like, I want a few thousand users or something like this, which I thought was huge. Because at the time, like when you get 10 users, like, oh my gosh, 10 people, that's a lot. But some of the apps that I saw at the beginning, they since contacted me. So I had calls with some of those founders who founded those apps that I thought were really huge, and they wanted to just chat about that kind of app, you know, because they saw that my app was now bigger. so it was kind of like, oh, you know, you have to try, because you never know.
How did the success of Worrydolls contribute to your future endeavors?
Well, part of the reason I did it also was because I mentioned that I did this cryptocurrency app that didn't work that well because no one knew how to really market it. That was one of the things. So I said I want to do Worrydolls to figure out how to market an app. And what eventually happened was that it was not me marketing it at all. It was like someone on TikTok that just made a video of Worrydolls, and that's what let people know about it. So it was kind of like, oh, you know, despite my best efforts to be smart about this, it was much more important that like someone posted on TikTok, which, okay, that's something I had to learn. But how to sort of contribute to future endeavors, it really helps to have a lot of feedback. So Worrydolls gets a lot of feedback. I get a lot of reviews, I get a lot of notes, I get a lot of emails, which is awesome, first of all, because it lets me know that like real people are out there using the app. That feels really cool, like after all this that I did, to know that like people are using it and finding it good. So it's like encouragement to try more things, but also to feel more how different people react to certain things, because the app is used now in a lot of different places in the world, in a lot of different countries, cultures, things like that. So it really pushes you to think a lot about like, these are real people that will use it. I really have to think about the user more and more, and how to connect with those people on the other end, which before is an abstract thing, but Worrydolls helped it be much more kind of real, that you get to meet a few people that used it, and it brings it to life a lot more.
Sounds good. And I think we're coming to the end of the interview, but another topic that a lot of our viewers are interested in is the app that you helped develop for the UN. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So that was the first thing I did when I got to the Netherlands. And part of the reason was because I had been in Egypt and I knew a lot of people connected to sort of, we'll say spies, but like connected to State Department stuff. So like diplomats, things like that, people who were sort of watching things flowing back and forth. And basically through a contact, I was asked to help design an app that was, so within the UN, I came to know there were like different working groups. So they've sort of, the countries are all there working together, blah, blah, blah. And they say, okay, we need to, like an example would be climate change. You know, they would say, we have a working group for climate change. And then each country sends a representative or something. So this was the working group on counterterrorism. And at that time, there was a big conflict, Iraq and Syria, and people were flowing around the world, and they called them foreign fighters. So basically people who were moving around and participating in conflict. And it was a humanitarian issue, of course, and it was a legal issue. There were all these different aspects, and they didn't have a handle on it because every country knew their own situation. So if you're a Jordanian diplomat, you know that people are kind of coming into Jordan, leaving Jordan, and then you don't track it after that. So they needed a place to put all the data to be able to track this phenomenon and understand it. So that's what the application did. It took all this data from the different countries and sort of visualized it and let them analyze it, and then it had overlays of academic studies. So what do we think about this topic and how should we analyze it and things like this. That was one aspect, and like legal frameworks and things like that. So it's sort of like a way for them to internally study the issue. The only downside, well, I guess it's a downside or kind of like an aspect of the project, that it wasn't put public because the data was all kind of classified stuff. So even I didn't see the final version because it was classified. So it was put behind their layers and layers of security, and I guess they use it, or I heard that they were using it, and it was a thing, but it was never sort of shown to the people. It was sort of an internal tool for them. But again, like very cool. And the nice thing was I got to work with some very talented people on that. So I worked with a company called Vignette, which another one that failed, not my company, but theirs. But they were cool. They were a photographer and journalist for the New York Times that then made this sort of UX company, and they were the other party that worked on it with me.
So we are going to wrap this interview. I have one final question. Upon hearing your entire life story about your career, I feel like there were a lot of instances where luck played a very huge factor in terms of your success and being able to move forward in the spaces that you work in. So do you think luck is more important than hard work, or vice versa?
Yeah, well, it's like a cliche that like if you work hard, you eventually get lucky, that kind of thing. I think to go back to your earlier question, which I think was like a very good question that takes several answers to like think about what's more important, passion or money, right? So like if you are passionate about something, it's not really work. It's like I don't know if you ever have the feeling like you're working on something, you don't feel time passing. This is what you need, because then you can work on something a lot late into the night, get up early thinking about it, keep working on it, get it done, whether it makes you money or not. That sort of hard work will lead to luck, like so-called luck, because you will make things. I think that when you're making things and you're putting things out into the world, that will attract people. That's one thing I've found. So like even if it doesn't go anywhere, it will slowly put you in touch with talented people. And even if it doesn't, it may not become your career, it may not be how you make your millions and retire off this one thing you made, but if you meet one or two really cool people and they become the ones that invite you to the next thing and the next thing, then you'll see when you look back that these things you did are what made it happen. So I think it's hard work, but it should be, you should find something where you don't mind hard work, and that's probably the one that will make you lucky.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, I really believe in that philosophy. So thank you so much for your time, Peter. I think we've been speaking continuously for the past 55 minutes. So with that said, I think we can conclude our interview and move on to the Q&A session. Elvira, do you think we should have a 10-minute break in between the Q&A session and this interview, or should we go straight into it?
I think we should go straight into it.
Okay, and due to the lack of time, I think we should cut it down to 15 minutes. Would that be reasonable?
Works for me. Let me know. Yeah.
Okay. So let me check the chat first. We only have a few questions here. Actually, one question. Gloria has asked, how many languages do you speak?
Depends how you define speak. So I guess I speak English so far, so good. And then I learned French in high school and college. So I guess French. And then in Egypt, I studied Arabic. I studied Sinhalese for a little while, but like if I visit Sri Lanka again, I won't get by in Sinhalese, but I know a few words. And now Dutch. I had to learn a little bit of Dutch because I became a Dutch citizen. And to do that, I had to pass a test. wherein two Dutch officials interviewed me in Dutch about my job and like how I would support myself. So I had to know enough Dutch to do that. But I'm not like one of these geniuses at languages. It was just kind of like getting by with enough wherever I was in the world. And like I said, I still sort of always felt like I didn't understand everything happening, but that's because I'm not. Certain people have that skill, but I don't think I'm one of those.
Yeah, that makes sense. And since we're done answering the questions that we have in the chat, I'd like to open up the floor to the audience. So if any of you want to speak, please use the raise hand option and Alvira will unmute you.
Yep, Gloria, I'll unmute you.
Hi, so if no art, what would you be doing?
Sorry, can you say again?
I was just asking, if not art, what would you be doing?
If not art. Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I think that I'm friends with a lot of journalists. So I and for a while I was working to do that. So I did like little mini journalism time. I guess I find that interesting. It's like I look at the news a lot and stuff, you know. So that might be interesting. I don't have the guts to be a doctor. That's way too high stakes. Way too high stakes. And I'm not like rigorous enough scientifically for that. Gosh, I thought, like I said, I thought for a little while about doing law, but I'm pretty glad I didn't go into that because I think it's pretty like really detail oriented, and I've noticed that for me, like the creative aspect is what makes me happy. So yeah, hopefully something creative, but luckily it worked out with this. So yeah.
And we have a question from Marika in the chat. She said, how have the different places you've lived in and cultures you've seen impacted your designs?
Super good question. Yeah, so I think the big one is seeing like, and because I think one thing that I did is live in places for quite a while. So I lived in Egypt for like 8 years, you know, so that's quite a long time, and kind of live in a place for a long time and get to know it, to get to know the differences. And then I had where I'm from, which is the US, and now I'm in the Netherlands. And so you have to learn how to communicate when people speak different languages. And so I think that really helps with simplifying. I think like simplifying is its own skill. Like there should be a class in school called Simplifying 101, where like you are given a very complex topic and you have to make it dead simple where someone can understand it. I think that's a really important skill, and especially for design. So when like now, the way that what my company does is a client will come and say, we have this idea, and it's sort of like it's like a sketch on a napkin of like, we hope this will work, or we think that we can make an app about this. And then you really have to simplify it down to its core and make something that anyone can understand. And so yeah, I think that for me it's more of a natural thing, because it's again something that I have to kind of do every day, because I can't rely, like when you live outside your main, where you're from, where you were as a child, you can't rely on the fact that everyone shares the same basics necessarily, if you know what I mean. Because if you go somewhere else and you use some really kind of special way of explaining something, it's like use an example from the local area or something about seasons. Like in Egypt, they don't have. I'm from somewhere with like a lot of snow and a really hot summer and fall and spring. And in Egypt, there's no seasons, so it's like this whole metaphor doesn't work, and you have to make another metaphor. So sometimes in design, you would want like things to change over time, and you just had to come up with another metaphor. So that sort of thing, thinking about how to make things simple and wordless and kind of go to a level that is human rather than kind of based on a certain culture or my culture. It's like an ongoing thing, of course, but that's, I think, been useful. Yeah, I see the same in Kenya, right? So yeah, where I'm from, we totally have it, and it's something a lot of times you take a lot for granted of like, this is just how the world is, and then you go to another place, you realize, oh, okay, it's like something different. Yeah, exactly. No seasons, people. Very welcome. Thanks for the question.
Matthew.
Hi, so right now I'm a senior in high school and I just got like so many things to do to prepare for college. So I want to ask if you have any advice for someone that's trying to get into college, specifically someone who's trying to pursue a CS major.
Okay. So, and do you have a certain thing that you feel like you want to do once you finish college?
Well, right now, I'm planning on trying to go to the military as kind of like a stepping stone. I just want to get some like intake on what to prepare for going into college, the educational aspect.
Yeah, sure. Well, so it's funny. My co-founder of my company now is, I think, had a similar path. He was also in the military, and he also is like a CS guy. He ended up as a cybersecurity person, which is a very good field right now, by the way. So if you have those two, and that's sort of the path that you're looking at, it's like a very exciting field actually, and there's a lot of good openings and careers and things like that. So my advice would be to find ways to play with what you want to do, what you want to learn, because that also will help you. So like if you're interested in the sort of, I don't know if you are, but like in the cybersecurity realm, then there's also like in any of these sort of areas, there are ways that you can sort of, as a student, get participating in it. So like if it's cybersecurity, then they have like hacking challenges and things like that you can look up. So here, for example, in Holland, I know that they have like certain companies or even the government will sometimes have like, it's called capture the flag. So they put like something in the code of a website and you have to find your way to hack in and get it. And it's legal. So it's like a way to play with hacking without getting in trouble. That's nice. But if you want to build, then the very best thing you can do is build. So that's the same, like for me, after I graduated and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I had a job. Like I was telling Krishnan and Vera before we started, I was actually an admission counselor for college. And I would sit in the office. I was supposed to be reading applications of people that were getting into college, but I was like learning how to code websites with my door shut in my office. So I was like secretly doing what I wanted to do in the job while I was supposed to be doing the job, but that's, what I wanted to do. But that's the same. So as someone that read a lot of college applications, like went through thousands of them, when you write that essay or you kind of tell your story about yourself, if you say like, I'm into computer science and this is what I'm building and this is what I'm trying to do, and here's how I'm already using the skill in the world, that's super nice to see as like an admission person, because then you say, okay, here's someone who's going to take these skills that the university gives them and it's immediately going to put them to work in the world. Because what they want, what the schools want, is someone that's going to take all the lessons from school and then go out in the world and do cool stuff. That's what they want, because that's good for them, because then you're like an ambassador for the school. So if you can already show that you're like, yeah, I'm really interested in computers and I code this tool, or I'm contributing to these open source projects, or I participated in these like hacking challenges and things like that, that's really good, because you show that you're already like getting yourself involved, and then they can trust that after you get the education, you're gonna just have superpowers and do the same thing. So that's I think what I would do, is just kind of get started building stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have one more question. I'm not sure who it's from, but it says, how did you find the courage and motivation to keep up with your journey of figuring out what to do in the past?
Yeah. Well, I think when I tell it in retrospect, it's been a long time, you know, like I'm kind of old. So like I've had a lot of time, and there were a lot of times I didn't have any motivation, and I was like flat. I was flat, like couldn't work, couldn't do things. Like definitely went through those times where I was like depressed. I didn't do anything for a long time. So it's not as if I was some sort of like, you know, Superman charging forward. No, like there were plenty of times where I even like gave up. But then once you give up, the next day comes, you have to start again, right? You somehow have to start again. And I mean, I think it kind of comes from inside. You have to keep trying. You have to be stubborn. Like, okay, this thing is going to come out of me one way or the other. That's something I have, like, to go back to Krishnan's first question, like I just have that where I want to do things, I want to create things, and otherwise I get sick, so I just have to do it. But I think everyone has something like that. Maybe it's cooking, maybe it's music, maybe it's computer science, you know. So if you have that thing, it's going to be with you no matter what. You call it the passion, right? So like that's not going to go away if it's not working. That's how you know it's your passion, because even if you don't get anything back from it, you're going to want to do it anyway. So that's the one. It will give you the motivation. The other thing I'll say that I have come upon recently, now that I came through all of those times when I was depressed and anxious and like went through it all, is one thing to keep in mind, that if you want to do something really seriously, then motivation is one part, but it's also, even if you're not motivated, you should try to do it anyway. That's one answer, because for a lot of things, if you're building up a skill, or if you know logically that you want to do something, there will be days when you don't feel like doing it. Absolutely. There will be months where you don't feel like doing it. And I've had those for sure, where I don't want to look at the computer, I don't want to look at the art, I don't want to look at a paintbrush. And you should do it anyway on those days. So on some level, you just have to like kind of force yourself into working on things if you know you want to do it. That's sort of, yeah. So I say it's sort of two parts. Like on the one hand, your passion will pull you forward, and when it doesn't, let your brain pull you forward. Let your brain tell you, no, we're gonna do this anyway because we're sticking to it.
If
Hi, I'm Tana. I also have a question.
Sure.
So as someone who's very intrigued by cultures and religions, I do wonder how did you manage to include that in your job now, since I think it's really hard to have many passions and to include them in your job now.
Yeah. In terms of the religion and my love of that, or like my love of studying that and things, and what really intrigued me about religions was I like partially also the aesthetics, or like how it looks, and sort of like big cultural topics. So how to explain this? So you have like really deep motivations for people. So what makes people do what they do? That's always interesting to me. So like what makes people take one job and not another job? What makes people choose one school and not another school? What makes some people get up at 5 a.m. and start doing their exercises, and someone else wants to stay up until 5 a.m. coding on a computer? You're like, what motivates people? That's kind of like a religious topic in a way. Like a really deep motivation can be religion for some people, right? And if you get a culture where a lot of people sort of share this idea, then it's a very powerful force. But really at its core, it's sort of religion. One of the main parts of it is like the story. So like there's a story that motivates you to do something. It can be a religious story or personal story. And like in my work now, that's super important. So getting people on a team to work towards the same goal, you really want to understand what makes people tick, and you don't want to mess with that. It's something very powerful, like one of the most powerful things, you know, because if you can motivate people and direct people to go a certain direction and get them to understand you, you can use that for good or you can use that for bad reasons. And I think you all definitely know, like if you look around the world, you can see that we have a lot of people who use such things for bad reasons. Like that's just a fact. You can look at the news and see that. So it's kind of like understanding really deep motivation was always really important to me. And I think stays as sort of like the core of, one of the cores of what I do is like trying to figure out what the deep motivation is and then make a story about that with technology. Or so like Worrydolls, for example, understanding that people are stressed by technology, stressed by phones and things like this, and trying to make a way to counter that with technology. So it's not explicitly religious, but I think some of the lessons that I learned in my studies come up, or like examples or hints at what might make people tick has remained useful. But yeah, that's one of my side projects. Like next to me I have a bookshelf that's still full of like all that stuff, because I just now I have 3 little kids, so I don't have too much free time. But if I'm going to read, it's usually something like that, because it's one of my other passions that doesn't directly relate to my work.
Thank you so much. I relate to that mindset a lot, and it's very inspiring to hear that although you're not doing anything religious in your job right now, you still apply the things you learned about it in your job, and that's very inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
All right, for those of you who have any questions still, you can put them in the chat, but I think we're going to move on to the presentation portion.
Okay. So I can get started with that. That's my part, right? Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'll share my screen here. So basically, here, let me bring this up. I have 3 parts that I put together. And some of it will be a little bit familiar from what we already discussed. And by the way, Krishnan, like, super interesting questions. You made me think a lot about things. So like, yeah, super nice. And I think it sets us up relatively well. So, okay, I have 3 like mini parts. The first is a presentation, which is, I thought a lot about like, okay, you're taking your time on a Saturday to like hear about what I already saw in life. So what do I want to share? And that's this first part, which is how to be a fake designer. So I mentioned to Krishnan that I got my first job by lying. So this is about like how to hack your way into knowing how to do something. And it's not just about design. It can be for anything. So if you're interested in computer science, if you're interested in whatever you want to do, this is my advice on how to figure it out. Because it's not always, in my experience, like I didn't get a degree in what I do, and yet you have to figure out how to do it anyway. So if you have that passion or you have something you want to do, this is what I figured out about how to do that, whether or not someone wants to teach you about it, whether or not you go to school for it, or you get hired to do it. So like how to figure that out. That's number one. Number two, as you know, I made the app Worrydolls. So I'll show you quickly, moving into more technical stuff, some pieces about how Worrydolls works, how it's made. And I'll show you a little bit about the UX, like how it flows and how it. So I'm a designer, a UX designer, and how I would pass that to a developer. So I'll show you just inside, like the inner workings of it. So if you've used the app, okay, now you know how it was made. That's part two. And part three is the challenge. And I have an example that I'll make, but that will be like, we'll make a little tiny app together in Figma. And that will be the basis also for the challenge where you can win a super prize. Okay, sound good? Here we go. So part one. How to be a fake designer for fun and profit, because that was what I was a fake designer. Okay, so part one, you might have to lie. Why did I put this in here? You are going to want to do things and people won't necessarily open the door for you. And in my opinion, sometimes you want to like go in the window anyway. So this is how I started in design. If I hadn't said I'm a designer on the first day, even though I had no degree, and I never worked as a designer before, I wouldn't have ever gone down that path. So let's say that you have to kind of fake it till you make it. So you have to say, I can do that. All right, so you lied. Now what? I had a slide here. I was trying to figure out today if I should keep this in, which is like step one, Google it, which is kind of what I did. So if you are given a task and you don't know what to do, keep in mind that there's a whole world of information out there for you that you can kind of figure out a lot of different skills. And actually one thing, like one hint to know from someone, now I'm in the field and I've been in the field for a long time, that I'm constantly still Googling how to do stuff. And every developer will tell you the same thing, by the way, which is that even people who went to school for things, you don't become like a textbook in your head. You still have to Google, you still have to do things. So do not be afraid of not knowing something and just like go for it anyway. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. So the first thing I'll say though, in terms of like actually giving the hints I got one very good lesson. I mentioned the two teachers I had, which were Sagar and Manoj. I'm going to tell you something that Sagar told me, which turned out to be I'll say the only lesson I ever got in doing design and branding and marketing and all of that. And it turned out to be kind of a lesson for life, which is very important to what I do. So I'll pass that to you because that's one of the only things I was given. Part two and part three are both you have to fail. You have to fail a lot. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I mentioned that all my failed stuff that I did, but that's something very important to keep in mind. So we'll mention that again. Part four, you need to be willing to steal. You have to steal knowledge from other people. It's okay to steal knowledge, that's my opinion. So we'll quickly talk about that, like how to steal knowledge, how to get what you need, because people aren't going to give it to you. Sometimes you have to take it for yourself. Sometimes that's with school, that's with knowing how to do things. But if you're going to go on a path like this, you have to be ready. And I'll tell you a little bit how to do that. So the one lesson I was ever given, this is Sagar Goting. This is one of my two first teachers. And he, like I said, was an advertising person. So he's one of the people who, yeah, when you see a Coca-Cola advertisement like that, he was one of the people that worked on it, which, okay, everyone has their opinions, good or bad, about advertising, but that's what he did. And I wrote very, very big here about ideas, because technical skills are one thing, but if you look around the world now, so I'm a designer and I've done art, right? But I just saw before I joined this call a story about artificial intelligence that won a fine art prize in Colorado. So someone programmed an AI to make a painting and it just won a prize. So like the world that you're entering into is going to be one where technical skill still matters, but what's really going to matter a lot, in my opinion, are ideas. So like how to make valuable ideas is valuable in any field. So Sagar taught me this, which is always have an objective. Always have an objective for everything you do, for an idea, for anything else. So what's an objective? The objective is something you want to change in a person or the world. So you can think about this in your daily life. Like if you stand up and you walk across the room, that's not just because for no reason, right? It's because you're getting a glass of water, or you're going to go open the window to let some air in, or you want to go feed the cat. So there's always a reason that you're doing something. And it's the same in design, and it's the same in making apps, it's the same in programming, where I'm going to make this app because I want something to happen. I'm going to say something to a person because I want them to do something. You always have something that you're trying to accomplish with your action. So you should really think about what that is and think deeply about it. So I have an example. Let me switch my sharing here. So this is the example that Sagar gave me. And it goes to what is an objective. Okay, so everyone knows, I mentioned a few times Coca-Cola. It's the example that comes to my mind because of this, which is, this is the, I said an ancient example because it's from 2010. So this was like really new when I was learning about my field, about design and branding and all these things. And it's an ad that Coca-Cola did and that Sagar worked on. So if you think about what is Coca-Cola and what they stand for, what he told me was, you think that Coca-Cola is a fizzy drink or like a sugary drink, right? This is what it is. But what they said their objective is, their deeper objective is not, we want to give them a fizzy drink. That's not their objective. What they said was, we want to make people happy. Okay, so we are a company that's trying to make people happy. We exist to make people happy. The way we do that is we give them a fizzy drink. Now, this goes back to what I was saying about religion, right? And this sort of manipulative possible force in the universe. So the human reason for Coca-Cola to exist is to make people happy. Now, if I was to tell you, on the one hand, we want to make a fizzy drink, and on the other hand, we want to make people happy. Who wants to work for a company that makes a fizzy drink? Sounds boring, right? Who wants to work for a company that makes people happy? Okay, suddenly that's like, okay, I might want to do that. So it's, you could say it's true, it's a lie, whatever else, but this is the way of thinking. Okay, so we want to have a deeper objective than our actual thing. So what they did was they took this regular Coca-Cola machine and they modified it so that they put a person inside. So it was no longer full of a fizzy drink. It was full of a person with like a hidden secret. So every time that someone went and said, give me a Coca-Cola, what would come out was something to make them happy. So I think she receives 1, 2, 3, 4, like more soda. That's one. The next person that comes, so now she has enough for everyone to share. She's happy. So like they're trying to make people happy with this special machine. Okay. The next person who comes, they get flowers. The next person who comes, it depends on the person, but they have someone in there that's like handing things and they're filming it. So the next person that comes, I think, gets a pizza. They get all sorts of different things. So this is the example that I was given about like, what is the deeper objective? So to go back to this. So if I bring that into what I do, so I mentioned Worrydolls. So my small objective, like the fizzy drink objective, is I want people to be able to type their worries. But what I'm actually trying to do is I had this idea that the phone, so I'm sure you all spend enough time on phones, right? But there's also a lot of research, or people know that the phone leads to a lot of anxiety, that it makes people stressed out. Like you see, this is what the friends are doing. They're getting into this or that college. They're going on this or that vacation, and it can lead to a lot of stress. So I said, can I make a way to take that same device and let it help people, you see? So that's the deeper objective that I was trying to do. So the fact that I'm letting people type their worries is just, it's a byproduct of the mission that I was trying to do. So think about what the mission is. And that's going back to that thing about like how to motivate people. This is sort of how to let people understand what you're doing in life. So like the big objective matters more. So to think about like in life, or when you're deciding on college or class, wherever else, you can always be thinking, does the action I'm doing get me further away from or closer to my objective? If you have that big objective, am I moving farther away or closer? Am I spending my time in the right way to reach my objective? What's the most important thing for me in the class? So if you're going to school for computer science, that's why I asked right away, like, what do you want to do? Because once you know your objective, you know what you should start working towards. So when you're in class, if you know, okay, I would like to be a hacker, or I would like to work for Google, I would like to build apps, then you're already working toward doing that. So you're not taking a class because your objective is to take the class. You're taking class because your objective is, I want to build X. Then you will know how to focus and why to focus, more importantly. Okay, so as for life objectives, for me, again, one thing to sort of point out, and one thing technically when it comes to UX and coming to your UX challenge, your Figma challenge, one thing to keep in mind is that people like me who are UX designers are very, very focused on manipulating you, because they all know what I just told you about the objectives and just how manipulative it can be. So like this Coca-Cola thing, Coca-Cola means happiness. I think you're all, maybe you're hearing me and you're being skeptical, like, yeah, okay, but that's a big corporation. I don't really trust them. Like, you shouldn't, right? Because at the same time, like, does anyone use TikTok? Does anyone use these other apps, right? They are designed very well by very smart people to make you keep scrolling because they want to advertise to you. So one thing I wanted to show was this graph right here, which is a conversion graph. This is a technical thing that designers use to measure like how many users go through each step of a process. So signing up for an app, buying something, following a user. We use these sort of graphs to track, and then we do testing to see, making a button blue or green, will it make more people or less people click? So these sort of manipulative things are constantly being used on you, and these are powers that you can use in life too. So just keep it in mind, because you're not only consuming from these phones, you're also hopefully going to be creating on them. So you should be thinking about the fact that these superpowers are there to be used against you, and you can also use them. But remember to use your powers for good. So when it comes to these sorts of things, what I found is I started out by learning how to do this to make money. So like to advertise things, to get money, to build businesses, things like that. But what turned out to be much more valuable and actually got me much farther was when I started trying to think about what I actually cared to do and what I thought was good in the world. So that's why I mentioned these objectives. So think carefully about it, because if you don't, you're going to be working towards something that's maybe someone else's objective or is the wrong objective, like searching only for money and not searching for your passion or searching for meaning. Okay, so that's part one, ideas. That came from Sagar. Part two, once you've gotten into something, how do you keep getting better? It's continuous improvement. So here we get to fail. So one thing you have to do is do a lot of whatever you want to do, and don't be afraid to not succeed. So you want to take every possible job. So if you want to do computer science, if someone says, hey, I have a great idea for an app for making spaghetti, and you think that's the dumbest idea ever, do it anyway. Just do it. And it won't work, but you'll have experience from that. And the next thing you do will be better. And if no one will give you a stupid job to do, you should make up your own stupid job and do it. So this is a screenshot of my work folder. So these are like all clients or projects of mine. And the reason to show it is, Krishnan, when I first showed it to you, I said it was a year. I think as I looked at it very carefully, it's actually more like a year and a half, 2 years. But these are all my clients. And the ones that are marked here are the ones that were paid. The rest, a lot of them were unpaid. And a lot of them were things that I did as sketches, as proposals, as things that didn't work out for whatever reason. But that's, even now, like, I make money doing this, and this is my job, but you have to be willing to do a lot of things that don't pan out and don't work, and that's just something that you should expect, in my opinion. So going back to hard work, like, yeah, it's hard work, but eventually it turns into luck. The next thing is steal what you need. So the reason to say this is going back to the first thing of, as I mentioned, Google it. So the reason to say that is that even now, when I don't know how to do something, or if I want to keep pushing myself forward in my field, there's always going to be, and I think in any technical field, so this is like, you're all sort of science or STEM students, right? The way that technology moves now, you're never going to be done learning. So when you graduate, that's like the start of your learning, actually. So always, what I found is I have to be constantly looking around. And then what I do basically is, if I see someone that does something that I think is cool, I just learn everything I can about that person. So there are like people who are really good at 3D art that I saw, and I thought, how in the world do they do that? So I just started Googling them, really learn a lot, get their interviews, find everything about them, find out what tools they use, find out how they put things together, how they think, really try to learn from afar. Because for a lot of these things that are cutting edge, like the things you really are going to be cool to learn, there's no class, because the people doing it are not teaching how to do it, they're just doing it. So you have to kind of follow and reverse engineer what they did. That's why I say steal what you need. And that's not to say that you should copy other people, although I think in general, if you want to copy to learn, that's okay, but it's not copying. It's to take the skills that you need for your own path. So ultimately, what you're going to make comes from inside you, but you need to look at other people and what they're doing in order to gather the skills that you need to do it. Note, I'm not a lawyer, so if you get in trouble, don't blame me. Okay, so with that was part one. With that, I can, speaking of stealing, I can show you how I made my app. So the way I think that Krishnan found me was from Worrydolls. So I will just show you how Worrydolls works. And I'll give you a few quick concepts about UX. I'm going to show you how the file is constructed that I gave to the developer and how UX basically works, okay? In a very sort of quick way. We'll spend like 10-15 minutes on it. Then I'm going to show you how my own personal touch was brought into it, or how my own sort of, how to say, like, something from inside me, I brought into the project. So it's not just technical, but like how I made it my own. That's the other aspect, I think, of the challenge that we'll do, is how to make something a little bit your own, or to, yeah, not just have it be technical, but have it come from inside you. So we'll show that, how Worrydolls is made, and then we'll go into the challenge. So, okay, let's look at Worrydolls. Okay, so this is, can you see this all fine, by the way? It's big enough? Okay, I'll assume someone will raise a hand if it's like impossible to see. This is the file of Worrydolls. So that's all it is. And if you've used the app, it's a pretty simple app, but this is basically how it looks from my point of view when I'm making it and when I'm passing it to the developer. And so what it is, this is Figma, inside of Figma, and each of these represents a screen. And we have basically two concepts in an app. And it goes back to the point about objectives, okay? So there's like big ways to think about objectives, like what do you want to do, what do you want to change in the world, what's your mission, why do you wake up in the morning? That's one like very big way to think about it. And you have a small way too. So the small way is like, how do I get people to use this app, right? So we have two basic parts of an app. We have screens, which are screens where you see information, and then we have flows. And flows change something on a screen. It goes from before to after. So you can think about, like on Instagram, you have your feed, right? And that's a screen. You see the feed. Then if you want to follow someone, that's a flow. It's a very simple flow. You hit a button and it goes from before you weren't following them to after now you're following them. That's the two sort of ingredients, screens and flows. So with Worrydolls, we actually don't have very many screens. We have the home screen where you see your worries. You have the single detail. So you have one doll that's laid out like this, where you see the whole history of the worry and how it changed over time, and some buttons are there. You have the menu. Yeah. We can change a few things. And you have the finished worries, and then the single finished worry. So it's very simple because this and this are basically the same. Everything else is flows. It's changing this screen, etc. So if we look at a flow, what is a flow? So here we have the home screen, and we're going to go from before, where we have, let's say, 3 worries, to after, where we add a new worry. So we want to add this worry, my dad is sick. We have, the objective is to tell the doll that my dad is not feeling well, and that's why I'm worried. So the flow is always a series of screens. So in Figma, at the end, I'm going to show you how to make this. Basically, you can pop down a screen and start designing, but a flow is like a series of screens that gather the information to move it from before to after. So before we don't have this worry, and after we have the worry. So the flow works like this. the first screen, we see the doll and we see the keyboard, and the user is going to type the worry in with the keyboard, and we see that here. And when it happens, the button comes up. So that's like the next state of the thing. So here, there's no worry typed and there's no button. And once they type, the next thing that happens is the text is there because I typed it, and I can also confirm it. So now I can say, tell the worry. So that's step 2. I've changed something. Step 3, after I press this button, tell the worry, I get this confirmation. So now it's confirmed. The doll knows why I'm worried. And I move back to the home screen with the new state. So before and after. So this is the sort of concept that we'll work on in the demo. But this is all of how Worrydolls is created. So if you come back here, you can see the onboarding flow is the first thing that happens when you join the app. So you go from a user who has no worries to creating the first worry, just like I said. That's the flow, and then you land on home. Also, when you create a new worry, that's exactly the flow I just showed. When you want to finish a worry, there's a flow to do that. So it's just screens and flows. You show the information and you change the information from one thing to the next. And that's as simple as it is. So there's those 2 main aspects. So the only other thing to say is with every flow, of course, you want to have an objective. So you want to say, this is what I want the user to be able to do. Be very clear about that, because the more clear you can be, going back to these lessons about like how to communicate with people from another culture who may not have the same background as you or may not speak the same language as you. If you're very clear and you let them do one very simple thing and you make it very simple for them, they'll accomplish the objective. But in order to do that, you have to think clearly and think very simply about what your objective is. Okay, so that's my like very quick lesson in UX. The next thing to show is more about how Worrydolls is constructed and how to make it your own. So Krishnan mentioned that, and here I can actually just share my whole screen. Here we go. Oh man, I hope I don't. Okay. You see me? Is it working fine? Okay. So Krishnan mentioned that I did a bunch of art and things like that before. So you can, let me see if I show one of the projects that I did. This was when I was doing books and journalism and things. So did a lot of drawings and paintings and used in particular this sort of collage style. This is something that I developed or that I worked on as art. So like I would go and scan flowers and then overlay them onto paintings. And this is something that was sort of my trademark or something that I thought was really cool. And this can be art, like this is an artist's example of something, but it can also be technical. So like something that you thought of or like a little invention you had and you want to make it your own. So the technical part is what I showed with the screens and the flows, but this was sort of a touch that I had been working on style-wise for a long time. And despite the fact that Worrydolls is like, well, it's a technical project, it's an app, I wanted to make it my own. So the way that the dolls are constructed, and these are all the dolls of Worrydolls. So each one has 3 possibilities. This is the first worry, which is sad. They can have the flower if they're new, or they can be finished and happy. So these are all of them. These are all the ones I ever created, although we're now making more. And the way that they're made is here in Photoshop. So I have all the layers inside Photoshop, and it's all made by collage. So what I did at the time and what I continue to do, because I've just always been doing this as part of like what I like to do, is to go out and gather like, well, here are some leaves. So I think this was in the fall, collect some leaves and flowers and some more. These are dirty ones, but okay, nice colors if you ask me. Flowers. And then for each of these, would just select a little bit of it and copy it and then come over to the doll and put it on there. And so this is how they were constructed. And this is what I chose to do. And this is how I did this. And in the demo or the little activity that we can do, I use like a similar technique. So that's one reason to show you this, is because this sort of collage style of changing the doll and making the clothes of the doll is one that I can use in the upcoming thing. But think a little bit about, yeah, what inspires you or what you like. So if you're going to design as part of this challenge, you can also think about what sort of styles you like. It might not be this, it might be, I don't know, maybe you're inspired by a certain type of cartoon or a certain type of art or painting or classic painting or whatever else, and think about how you can bring that in, because the more that it speaks to who you are, I think that links to other people. That's a way without language to connect with people, because this is quite personal to me. And then, yeah, so technically speaking, then you can make him sad, you can make him happy. And this was it's just a series of layers that are stacked up, but it gives me the ability to do things in a way that's particular to me. So that's one thing that you can keep in mind for your challenge. Is it all clear enough so far? Any questions before we go into the final part? No? All good? All right, cool. By the way, if anyone has a question or hand raise on Zoom, you all have the experience with Zoom. So let me know if something's not clear. I can always kind of go back. Okay, so I've touched on a few points, right? So you know that for me, I've been in this industry for a while, and I've seen that being really good at it, you can either use that for kind of good reasons or bad reasons. The bad reasons are really obvious. So I want to get people addicted to my app so they are in it all the time, and I can advertise to them or make them do certain tasks, buy certain things, right? That's one sort of obvious way that you can use these skills for not good reasons. There are some apps out there that, yeah, help people fight addiction. For example, they help people study. They do a lot of good and useful things too. And one of the things that's really important to me is to try to like make this technology be useful for people in a way that's good. So yeah, I think here we can sort of make one app, but the first sort of point in terms of when you do a design is to first think of your big objective, right? So like, what do I want to actually change in the world? And with Worrydolls, I wanted to take a device that I know can make people really anxious and try to use it to help make people less anxious. So I want to take a similar approach for this little demo that we're going to do. And I thought, okay, let's make an app to calm people down. And then once you have that big objective, so let's just say I want to calm people down. Like that's what I want to do. That's my big objective. Big objective. So you can kind of note that. Then you have to think of a way, or like I said, a metaphor. So this is like, how is the way that you can relate to another person? So Coca-Cola, happiness, and they hand you a flower, they hand you a pizza, or they hand you a bunch of Coca-Cola to make you happy. How can we calm people down? So when I was thinking of this example, I thought, well, at the time I was doing a lot of gardening. So I thought one way to be calm is to like plant a garden and watch it grow over time. And that's sort of a metaphor that I think so kind of cross-cultural. A lot of different people can understand that, because everywhere you go, you find gardens of people growing things, growing food, growing trees, growing flowers. And gardening, I think, is also one of the things that helps you live a long and healthy life, right? So I thought, okay, let's make a little app. It's like super simple, small, objective, grow a garden. So for example, so we want to make a little app to grow a little digital garden. So that's what we're going to do. Just take like 10, 15 minutes, throw this together and see how it works technically to start from nothing and build a little app. Okay. So remember with Worrydolls, there are two basic components, screens and flows. Okay. So we want to start building on Figma. So if you get into Figma, zoom out, you can zoom out as much as you want, big empty space. But what did we say already? Don't be afraid of that. So the hotkey to bring this up is A, or you can go over to file and make a frame, but you need to make your little space of the phone where you want the content to appear. And I always just use, you can pick. So basically, I think it's small for you. As a matter of fact, let me switch this to just Figma so you can see a little bit bigger. because I think this is the part where you can also follow along with your own Figma, or later on you can follow along. On the right, you have the different devices. So you have to think from the start that you're going to work with a certain device size. And I've just chosen the iPhone 11, but you can choose any of the sizes that you want. And we need the first screen. So usually for me, I like to put the title at the top. So if we just call our app, we're making plants. So we'll just call it Planta. So there's our little title at the top. Let's do it very, very quick and dirty for now. And home, we want the screen. So like I said, we want to make a garden, right? So the first screen should be our garden. But as you remember from flows, we always have a before and after, right? So the screen is always a before state and an after state, because we're going to make a flow to go from one to the next. So this is going to be the before screen. So we have like, okay, picture some dirt, right? It doesn't look like much, but let's imagine some dirt. So, okay, there's our little garden. So the next thing we want to do is make a flow. So we could even say like, this is home. We can kind of label it, yeah? Home screen. So now we want to make something called plant a seed flow. So to do that, we can kind of copy paste a few of these. I just did Option C, Option V on a Mac, Control C, Control V on a Windows. Just pop a bunch down. I can clear this stuff off so I have some nice fresh artboards. And now we want to gather information from the user. So we're going to plant a seed. So the question is, what kind of seed should we plant? Where should we plant it? Like all the same questions you would ask of a real gardener. So if you're going to work with a metaphor in UX design, just think through it in real life, because people know the basics here. It's a very simple concept, right? So you can think through what the questions would be in real life. So I think the first good question would be, what kind of seed do you want to plant? Okay, very sort of simple question to ask. So here we can just make some simple options. Just like you would go to the seed box, and I don't know if people have seed boxes, maybe the counter wherever you keep your seeds, and you have some different types of seeds, and you can choose. So here's, let's say this was like one of those spinny seeds that falls from a tree, you know, the little helicopter ones, if you've ever seen those. Kind of a long seed. Okay, long seed. Now it's pink. That's okay. We can clean this up later. Small seed of a different type. A seed maybe for a small plant, or maybe a big plant that's just a small seed. Okay. And then let's do a big one, like maybe this is a seed for a cactus or something. Who knows? These are different seeds that the person can choose from. And what you want to do, so if we go back, remember that screen I had with the finger with the fire, and it said one of the words on there was dopamine. Okay. So dopamine is a chemical in your brain that's released when you do it in action. And you know, like if you like something, I think on TikTok, like a little heart will come off, or it goes like, you do something good and the phone goes cha-ching, and you're like, oh, I did something good, and your brain feels a little bit happy. So you want to kind of make that go in, right? Because you want to tell the person, oh, good, you selected a seed. You're very clever. You're a very clever user. You did a good job. So to do it, we can do something like this. We can make it visual. Maybe we're going to play a sound or something in the future. You can decide all that. But for now, we'll just give it a color change. So let's say that we've now selected the seed. We're missing something, by the way. So for example, how do we even get into this choice? So we have to make something called the call to action, which I forgot to put in, which is a button that gets you into the flow. So this is how I'm going to enter the flow. Is with a little button that says plant. And then the user will know that if they want to plant, they tap on this button. Try to keep it really simple. Plant. So plant a seed. And later we can connect this up. So that's the little button that will lead us into the flow. And the reason I remembered is because we also need a button here. So once the seed is selected, it's okay to move on. It's like in Worrydolls, once the worry is entered, you can confirm it. Before, you can't do anything, right? You can't confirm with no seed. That will cause the program to have a problem. So once they make the choice you want them to make, you give them a little confirm button. You can say, like, plant this seed. Yeah? Okay. So suddenly, we already know what kind of seed we want to plant. Now, we have to make another choice. So I think our work is probably not done yet. We'll keep it simple, but not too simple. So we can come back to our main screen, and we're going to plant this little blue seed so he can come over with us. So let's say now he comes over into our garden. So here's our dirt in our garden, it's empty. And now we have our little seed hovering. And the seed wants to know where should we plant him, right? So we can put a little indication here. Where do you want to plant? So here we have a little indication of the next decision that we have to make. So now this decision is, where should we plant this seed? And you can make these kind of interactions, but I think this will be, you will know kind of what I mean, right? On a phone, you can scroll side to side. So we can make it very simple. So for example, that the user can then scroll back and forth to select where the seed can go. And we might even put a little like indication, you know? So here we'll put a little like arrow so the user knows, oops, that's a bit weird. There we go. So now this red arrow will tell us where the seed's gonna go. So once I'm ready, I can move, and then let's say plant it here. Okay. So once that's done, if you remember back, we had screens, and the key with the flow is we have the before and the after. So this right here, what we just made, gathering information to move us from before to after. This is the plant to seed flow. This is home before. So what do we have now? I'm sure you're shouting it out at home. We have home after. So the only change is very simple. We have a seed in the ground. That's amazing. And here, the button has changed. So it's no longer to plant, we just wait. So if we want, we can then make this grow into a great big seed. And I think, let's see. Oh, actually, yeah. Say if you want to plant another seed, you can. And then we can also say, let's say, for example, in this app, we want to let them simply wait, or they can water the seed. So you can think it through in terms of, like I said, once you have kind of a metaphor for what you want to do with that small objective, you can think it through in terms of how it would play out in real life and give the user options. So, okay, this is really ugly, right? But we made it in like, I think we managed to make this in like 10, 15 minutes. Really, really simple. This is basically what you look at as a UX designer as a wireframe. So lots of people do this in tons of different ways. Some people make it only black and white. Some people make it colorful like I did. There's lots of different ways to do this. You can do it from really simple in 10 minutes to really fast. But sometimes even in job interviews, you're asked to make something like this, like show me how you will make an app for planting a seed. So the logic that I just went through is how you can basically approach something really fast. And the nice thing is with Figma, here's the trick, and here's one thing to keep in mind for your challenge. Once you get something to click on that you want to use for your prototype. A prototype is like something you can actually play with that works like a real app, but isn't. Up here in the upper right, if you go into Figma, you'll see design and then prototype. Click on prototype. Now, with the thing selected that you want to make clickable, you're going to see this little handle with the plus. You can take it and you can drag it. That makes a button do something. That makes this thing come alive. So now, when I tap on this button, I'm going to move over to this flow. Now I'm in the flow. Now, I want to do the same thing here. Let's say I want to tap on this to make this active, right? So the user is going to choose which seed, and here we get the dopamine hit. Cha-ching! You got the right seed. So I'm going to take this and drag it over here. I can do one other detail, which is to preserve the scroll position. I'll show you in a second why I did that. But that makes this active. And then what do I have to do here? Same exact thing. So the next thing that I'm going to do, focus, Peter, focus. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is confirm that I want to plant this seed, right? So once everything is selected, this seed is selected, and I want to plant, this is the next button I'm going to tap. So here I take this handle and we're moving through the flow. So now if I activate this, you can see the flow. I'm going from this direction to this direction, to this direction to this direction. Actually, in Worrydolls, it's the same. So if I zoom out and I turn on prototype, you can see how the flows move. So actually, this is the live, this is the actual development for Worrydolls. You can see all these prototype handles connected. So this is the actual thing I gave to the developer to build. And this is all the prototype connections, like what we're building now for Planta. So I want to plant this seed. Same thing here. You can make some fancy scroll stuff, but for now, let's just keep it moving. Drag it over. Okay, it looks good. And then we're just going to wait. We can plant again if we want, which will bring us back to the beginning of our plant to seed flow. So you can make that connection if you want. But for now, we'll just wait. Now, here's where the magic happened. If you go to prototype settings, you can choose a device. And then if I hit this play button, so right up near share, hit play. Let's hope this works because I'm showing it to you live. Usually things, okay, cool. Here's our app. Okay, we have a phone. We could tap plant. And here are the seed choices, like we said. If we tap here, what should happen? It turns blue. Remember how I said preserve scroll position on the, there's an extra little checkbox, preserve scroll position. You'll see it when you connect. That's to make it clickable like that without jumping to the top of the screen. Plant the seed. Where do you want to plant? Scroll, scroll, scroll. As a user, I can do that. Plant it here. Oh, nice. Now it's in the ground. That's home after. If I wait, I have a plant. Ta-da! It works. And the fun thing is too, if you like this and you like to work on this, something that can be really nice actually with Figma is that you can get the app. There's a Figma app if you just go to the App Store. And the nice thing is if you have a phone that can run it, you can also, oh no, it's Zoom blocking me out. Look. Anyway, maybe Zoom will block me here. Or I have to turn off my background. Anyway, I can show the same app working on my phone. And I can turn off my cool background to show it. But you can make the same thing work on your phone. So what I did, so this is the first version I made, like it's a kind of a UX wireframe. And I made kind of a more advanced version of this just to show, which is using the technique that I showed of Worrydolls, like the collage. So scanning and clipping out some things from Photoshop and laying them over. So this is a more sort of a flower, a tree, or a cactus. So I made it a bit more advanced just to show how it could look if you decided to like follow this through. Scroll to pick a position. So as you go, you can kind of change the wording a bit, make it a bit nicer here and there. Plant it. But you could see that it's the same thing, a very simple idea. And you can make something that looks a lot more like, I don't know, at least similar to Worrydolls, you know, in terms of sophistication. But yeah, what I would say for the challenge is I don't think you have to make exactly this. I think if you want, you can take something really similar like this if you want to make a garden app. And then in the last stage, you can kind of make it a bit your own or add a step to the flow or make the flow a little bit different. Do something that plays with some of the concepts that we talked about, you know, so kind of make it your own in a way if you want, with the final version here. The other thing you can do if you are so inclined is, yeah, think of your own objective that you want to work on. So I think for me, the most important thing to kind of leave you with is think of a good big objective and a small objective and just make a little flow. But if you want to just use this one, that's available, and we'll see what you can create, making a little gardening app. Or if you have another idea, if it does come to you, another idea that will calm people down, maybe making a cup of tea, think of what calms you down and make a little flow about that. That's also, I think, totally acceptable. And I would have a lot of fun seeing what you come up with. If you want to take the big objective, let's calm people down with a little app, think of what calms you down and just make one very, very simple flow. And if planting a garden seems good to you, you can do that and just, yeah, do a few things to make it your own. And very last thing, before I end, because I told Krishnan I would, if you are a Worrydolls user, I can tell you that there's an update coming very soon. I didn't have an update for like years and years, but I'll show you a quick sneak peek of what's coming, which is I made a nighttime mode. So now if you have dark mode on your phone, you can use Worrydolls in night mode. And also hopefully soon, here's a flow, just like I discussed with you, for adding photos and audio recordings to Worrydolls. So just like I mentioned, this is like my real app. You have a screen, you want to make a new flow. I've just created a new flow for adding an audio recording. And this is the real work that I'm doing. So what I just showed you is just, yeah, that's how I do my job. And I'm really looking forward to see what you all make. And well, the last thing for me is to thank you so much, because yeah, you spent your Saturday, and I know that Saturdays are like gold dust. So thank you very, very much for listening and for your time.
Yeah, I thank you all for coming to this event and taking time out of your Saturday to just sit here and listen to us speak to each other, basically with little to no involvement. So I really appreciate that dedication. But we do have one more segment, which is optional. It's unrelated to the event. It's an info session about Code for Tomorrow. So what we do here and what opportunities we have for people in high school and college. Elvira will be leading that session. So if you have the time, please stick around and stay, because these opportunities at Code for Tomorrow could be really beneficial to your life. I know that because I took these opportunities that I had at Code for Tomorrow, I've gone to places that I never imagined that I'd go to. I think Elvira can say the same. She got into a program recently called Tech Girls. Elvira, do you want to explain?
Yeah, so Code for Tomorrow is a nonprofit organization that has a lot of opportunities like this one. And real quick, I'll just start sharing our screen so I can talk a bit more about Code for Tomorrow itself. All right, so basically the purpose of Code for Tomorrow is to provide a bridge that connects students to their future by linking them to professionals like Peter, and also being able to teach topics like different coding languages and inspire the next generation to consider STEM or STEM-related fields as their career path, including things like UX and UI design, which Peter does today. So one of our main programs that we do, besides the events program, which is one of the programs that you're attending right now, is the classes program. So our classes program is pretty self-explanatory. It provides free online coding classes in the winter and fall and the summer. And basically, we have a bunch of different languages, and we have high school volunteers that teach kids around the world about these different coding languages. So we provide a curriculum that our team has already designed, and teachers that are volunteers teach the content in our different seasons. We have all of these different languages. It includes Java, Python, Scratch, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, C, machine learning, and some Swift. We've impacted over 3,000 students around the world. We've held 150 plus sessions, and we've had a lot of cities and teachers and members that have impacted this organization and benefited from our organization. So there are many different ways that you can get involved. You could be a student or a teacher, and teachers, they teach seasonally in our fall session and our summer session. You could also choose to be a long-term member or mentor. So members are high school students. They are involved in all the workings that manage nonprofit like social media, managing events like these, managing our classes, different, even the internal structure of our organization, stuff like that. Mentors tend to be out of high school. They can be college students, STEM professionals, almost anyone that's not really a high school student or younger than that. They're typically older people that want to help with our organization. And our volunteers, if they want to obtain their volunteer hours, then we can sign up on those, and we can also we can also be eligible for a PVSA, which basically recognizes your community service achievement. So our organization has 4 main departments, which are the classes that have the coding education part of our organization. And we have events that hold events like these with people like Peter, so that people can benefit from obtaining experience in real world STEM applications instead of different applications of STEM that they could pursue. And we also have outreach, which sort of does all our advertising for our initiatives like classes and events. And then we have internal affairs, which manages the internal record keeping and management of all 3 of the departments and the organization itself. So we have a couple different roles that could be fulfilled that you could look into. We have co-presidents and vice presidents. So Krishnan is one of our presidents, and he's here today. So he helps like oversee the organization and manage all the departments. And we also have directors. So I'm a director, so I help run events like these. That's really my main responsibility. I oversee people that are working towards the various efforts that go into planning these events. We also have the events of each of the different departments, so they all oversee their department and all initiatives and responsibilities that their department is responsible for. We also have project leads that lead smaller initiatives inside of each department, and those would each look over their own initiatives as well. And we also have some general like member policies that you guys might want to know about. Each member has like responsibilities to complete their tasks and attend weekly meetings. There's also leadership opportunities for them to become directors or even presidents like Krishnan. So Krishnan's a senior this year, right? So, you know, maybe if you decide to join our organization, you could be president or a director in the future. But everyone starts out as a member. Me and Krishnan were members when we were in 9th grade, and we've sort of worked our way up as we've gotten older. And we have team meetings every Saturday at 3 p.m. PST, which is 6 p.m. EST. You guys could convert that to your time zone and see. If you know that a lot of you are from around the world, so maybe that time is not possible for you. That's totally fine. We're willing to accommodate you as well. So just if that's the case, always feel free to reach out to us. Don't let that stop you from not joining. And yeah, it's an expectation that you either attend meetings or we work something out. And we will certify your hours for the work that you do. So don't worry, you will get credit for anything that you help us with. It helps look good on your college applications or even your CV if you're trying to get a job. Volunteer experience is also very fulfilling besides the benefits that it might provide you outside of that. So we really encourage you to join. And a lot, one of, yeah, let's not worry about this. But, so if you do join as a member, you would have to sign the bylaws, which just summarizes the stuff that I talked to you guys about today, responsibilities, things like that, listed in a lot more detail so that you can look through maybe what exactly you're expected to do. And these are just some of the things that we use in our day-to-day. And those are our social medias, in case you guys want to follow us. So thank you guys so much for listening today and joining our event. And we hope that you gain something from this event. And if you are interested in joining Corporate Mar and contributing to events like these, or even our other initiatives like our classes, that you feel free to look into those. Thank you all so much for coming today. That concludes our event, and we're so happy that you joined us today.